What about Lettuce? Is it still one of the best characters in the game? Does it work? Or does it match NATLAN's characters? Spoiler, not as much as Emily, they want sales. In NATLAN, Hyperbloom's goal is going to be, or may come to be slightly nerfier below the new NATLAN and Raiden national teams. Receive confirmed a direct buff for us to play against teams that match more with NATLAN's characters, and that suits Hoy over Source with wallets. With Lettuce, still worth it? Leave a good like, a good ending of card. Bennett, subscribe, leave a good comment to thank you for enjoying and seeing the video in the channel. Give it like and subscribe with bell. Thank you. Help a lot. It costs you nothing. It is totally free. Recommends and positions the video. Food, Bana and Lettuce, and no Halloween too. Happy holidays, gentlemen, party, and ladies who love Genshin Impact and Chinese monkeys. With Nahida, well, Nahida arrived in Ameru, arrived with the element inside, and currently could be considered the best character inside. Here, little spoiler, don't I give? Very much back to the subject, he is still must pull, and the best character within the game. The story with Nahida, and whether it is worth it or not, is, as I said at the beginning, the relationship with how they want to evolve the goal in NATLAN, and if they are going to prioritize more things that give it. Nahida arrived in his Meru, as I mentioned before, and enabled us 80,000 inside teams, but mainly what were played was the Bloom, the Hyper Bloom, and Agravites for carries Dendro, mainly. Kaching and then Chlorine that now with Silonen has a pretty solid Agrave core. So far it happened that weasels of the teams inside, that is, the Burns and Daya, Crepita mainly, were also studied and played minimally, but were not finished. To establish did not end up being popular, being comfortable mainly, and still are reactions that can be exploited much more. These reactions are as they relate to the Pyro, those who want to strengthen and incentivize in NATLAN. Mainly, you know that there is two very recent characters who are Kinish and Emily, who are directly related to the Burn and Crackling, and we know that the Pyro Nation will come 5 Pyro stars like the Pyro Traveler. Mavuika, maybe some Pyro Primordial Dragon or something else, some carries, some X, I don't know. That basically also empowers us and has synergy with the reactions of Pyro and Dendro. And here it comes to the important point and the analysis. Good points of Nahida and what things they're going to keep on in time and playability. Teams that are going to survive, in quotation marks, because they are surely very strong, but how far are they limiting us to Nahida? So that in the future, and as always continues to happen, everything is focused on the new, that people keep throwing the little money into the game? Well, that tipping point with Nahida, effectively, and you all know it, is the distance from Dendro equipment with Electro and even Hydro for Hyper Bloom, and the distance of the Dendro with Pyro from the NATLAN region, and currently Kinish and Emily Pilkai. Why? Nahida is the best Dendro character today, and you don't play anything wrong. If you are going to play Moalani Nahida, Xiangling in the future Mavuika and Shilonen for her to give him that master's bonus to Moalani and keep the burn for Moalani to bite. Already with Kinish, Nahida is not a good character unless you play Kinish Hyper Bloom and aside. Nahida has a C2, which is one of the most powerful in the game along with Furina's, because it eliminates or makes ignore from your team 30% defense of enemies. That defense is not resistance, it is another parameter that will give you a lot more damage, but this is only activated if you're doing any electro reaction with Dendro, that is, Hyper Blooms or Agraves. In fact, in Bloom that C2 has another passive that's not that strong, nor important, which says Dendro cores also have a 20% probability and a 100% critical damage, i.e. between quotation marks and at the probabilistic level 1 in 5 is going to do. This is not important and it is not damage, the important thing is the lowering of defenses. Well, this is the entrance barrier, gentlemen. Burn teams There have been attempts by Burn teams prior to NATLAN where they played Nahida Xiangling, Bennett Riotously to play a melted Riotously over Burn, that's not bad. Or some Ganyu team like that with Nahida Xiangling Bennett. and a Ganyu melting with the Laden on that burn, but again, it's not the most strong game, not comfortable, Ganyu's team, and never finished playing fitting. And now we're in NATLAN, and this is the analysis of the video that. It's very interesting, and I told you, that Tuesday is not good with burn reactions and cracking, and it is noticeable that they want, in quotation marks, to explode the cracking burn and reactions. With Pyro and Dendro, Kinich and Emily in NATLAN. I've already said it's an established thing. To what extent then will this limitation be good, and is an intelligent limitation on the part of the from Hoyoverse to NAHIDA? Well, it will enable us to play different things inside, like for example a NAHIDA with a Hyperbloom core, and then a Kinich team with a burn core, and besides Furina specifically works very well with Kinich and will work better. When Mavuika comes out, what she gives us is versatility. The Hyperbloom teams and the good points are going to stay strong. They're going to follow. This point is very interesting, and it will be difficult to limit them. There are teams that at certain points in the game have very interesting and have limited them to us in some or other ways, such as, although I have repeated it a lot and you will say, I already knew Phil, the permafrost, that when he gave them the and also, for example, to the NAHIDA herself in rotations that are not quick swaps, that is, that they are not to enter and leave the characters. They also limited it very much because when they have put many waves of enemies, NAHIDA must enter and leave the field, breaking the rotation of your carry, that maybe there are many carries that must stay long in the field, and if it comes out. That's why Emily solves this thing that happens to NAHIDA and Emily. He can play instead of NAHIDA. And so on the day they wanted us not to play Electro, we've been put to the Thunder Rally so we don't put on a Raiden Hyper Carry because it's immune to Electro damage. But it is noted that there are more nerfeable and less nerfeable mechanics, because they have versatility and different sources of damage. It's more or less nerfeable. Well, friends, the nerfeable level of the Hyperbloom team is short, because it has different sources of damage, because you can do brutal damage to Hydro if you're playing, for example, Furina plus Yellen, because you can play a brutal amount of damage inside. With a carry inside like Alhaitham, Kinich or Tignari, plus the cores inside the Hyperbloom. But also if you want to limit the Hyperbloom, you can play a carry Electro like Chlorine Decino, or Raiden a Hyperbloom core, and even if you get a little bit more limited to the Hyperbloom's damage, that is considered damage inside. You can do a high damage to Hydro, Furina and Yellen, plus a high damage of an Electro carry as can be Chlorine of Sino or Raiden, with which NAHIDA remains. I'd say I'd personally lower a post just because of this, and if NATLAN's goal continues. Zoing must pool, I mean, it won't be the third best character in the game, it'll be the fourth if anything. Will not change much, but NAHIDA is definitely still very powerful, as long as you understand this limitation, this little Jololite that they're putting on lettuce, metaphorically speaking, because you know his story, more related only to the inside Electro, and if anything, Hydro, i.e. Hyperbloom or Agrave primarily. And that's a little bit more is not useless, but a little more detached from the current teams, and that maybe NAHIDA can attack directly with a theme of putting multi-waves and multi-enemies in the abyss for you. Can screw rotations and better an applicator off the field, continuous, not dependent on entering, and get out like Emily could be, even though Emily is more focused on burn reactions. A little more, this is a NAHIDA lettuce, and if it's worth it, and what about lettuce? It is very strong. It is still very strong. You just have to understand this point. And thank you for all the support. Leave a good like, a hug and subscribe. Leave a good comment for the video. Thank you. For all the love of the canal, take care of them very much. Have a very good day. And Cheeto.